The cold morning air bit at her skin as she hurried down the sidewalk, her bag slung over her shoulder. The final exam, the one that could decide her entire future, was starting in less than an hour. She was already running late. Her heart pounded. She couldn't afford to fail. Years of studying, late nights, sacrifices, it all came down to this one test. Then she saw him. An old man stood by a broken-down car on the side of the road. The vehicle was ancient, rusted, and covered in dirt as if it had been sitting there for years. But that wasn't what made her pause. It was the man himself. His clothes looked outdated, like something from another time. He wasn't dressed for the weather, no coat, no gloves. His face was thin, pale, his eyes darting around like he didn't belong. Something about him felt off. She hesitated. She had two choices. If she stopped to help, she could miss her exam. Miss the exam, and her entire future could fall apart. If she walked away, she might never know if he was okay. Her stomach twisted. What was the right choice? Then the man turned, and their eyes met. His lips parted slightly, and in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Please. They're coming." A chill ran down her spine. She glanced around. The street was empty, silent except for the rustling of the wind. Who was coming? Was he in danger? Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. A reminder flashed across the screen. Final exam, 40 minutes left. She clenched her fists. Her whole life had led to this exam. But something deep inside her told her she couldn't just walk away. She stepped toward the man. "What's wrong? Do you need help?" His hands trembled as he pointed at the car. "I need to get out of here. I need to leave before they find me." She swallowed. "Who?" His breath came faster. "Listen to me. I can't explain now. But you," he paused, looking at her as if seeing something in her face that startled him. "You shouldn't be here. You're not supposed to be part of this." A shiver crawled up her back. Part of what? She should have turned around and left. She should have walked away and taken her exam. But she didn't. Instead, she reached for the hood of the car and said, "Let me help you." The man exhaled, relief flashing across his face. "Thank you." She wasn't sure what she expected when she lifted the hood, but it wasn't this. The engine didn't look right. It didn't even look like a normal engine. Instead of wires and metal, strange tubes pulsed softly, glowing with a faint blue light. She stepped back. "What is this?" The old man quickly slammed the hood shut. "It's not safe for you to know." She stared at him. "Who are you?" He hesitated. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver device. "Take this," he said. "You'll need it soon." She took a step back. I don't understand." The old man's eyes darted over her shoulder. "Too late," he whispered. "They're here." A low hum filled the air. The ground beneath her feet trembled. She turned. Bright lights appeared in the sky. Silent. Watching. Her phone screen glitched, flashing unreadable symbols. And then, darkness. The world around her went black. For a moment, there was nothing, no sound, no light, just emptiness. Then, her vision snapped back. The street was still there. The car. The old man. But something had changed. The air felt heavier, charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. She turned her head slowly. Above her, the lights in the sky hovered, 3 glowing orbs, too bright to be stars, too still to be aircraft. They pulsed in unison, as if they were watching. Her heart pounded. What is that?" she whispered. The old man grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "We have to go. Now." She pulled back. "Go where? Who are you? What's happening?" He exhaled sharply. "I don't have time to explain, but if we stay here, we're both dead." Panic tightened in her chest. She didn't know this man. She didn't know what those lights were. But deep in her gut, she knew one thing: this was not normal. Her instincts screamed at her to run. Before she could make a choice, a deafening hum filled the air. The ground vibrated beneath her feet. Then, the streetlights flickered and exploded. Sparks rained down as the old man yanked her toward the car. "Get in." She hesitated. This was insane. She should be in an exam hall right now, worrying about a test, not running from glowing lights in the sky. But when she looked up, the orbs had shifted. They were closer now. Too close. Her breath hitched. She jumped into the car. The old man fumbled with something beneath the dashboard. The car sputtered, groaned, then roared to life with a sound unlike any engine she had ever heard. It wasn't a normal car noise. It was deeper. Almost alive. The wheels screeched as they tore away from the sidewalk. She clutched the seat, her knuckles white. "What is happening?" The old man's face was grim. "They found me." She swallowed hard. "Who?" A glance in the side mirror made her stomach drop. The lights weren't in the sky anymore. They were following them. Bright, glowing, chasing. She turned to the old man. "You need to tell me what's going on." His hands tightened on the wheel. "I shouldn't even be here. I wasn't supposed to meet you. But now they've seen you, too." Her pulse hammered. "Seen me? What do you mean? Who are they?" He hesitated. "Not who. What?" She stared at him, expecting him to laugh, to tell her this was all some bizarre joke. But his face was dead serious. Her throat tightened. "What are they?" His hands trembled on the wheel. "Hunters." The word sent a chill down her spine. She turned in her seat. The orbs were gaining on them. They weren't floating anymore, they were moving. Fast. The street ahead was empty, stretching into the distance. But she had a sinking feeling they had nowhere to run. The old man gritted his teeth. "Hold on." She barely had time to react before he slammed a button on the dashboard. A high-pitched whir filled the car. Then, the world tilted. For a second, she couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred. A sensation of falling sideways gripped her stomach, like being on a roller coaster with no rails. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything snapped back into place. The car was still moving. The road was still beneath them. But the lights? They were gone. The silence was deafening. She turned to the old man, her voice barely above a whisper. "What just happened?" He exhaled, his hands trembling. I jumped us." Her eyes widened. "Jumped? What does that mean?" The old man didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled the car onto an empty stretch of road and killed the engine. The humming sound beneath the hood faded. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, he turned to her. "I need you to listen very carefully," he said. "Because after tonight, your life will never be the same." Her mouth went dry. The old man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the small silver device he had given her earlier. "Keep this close," he said. "Because the next time they come for you, I might not be there to stop them." The world outside the car was silent. Too silent. She could still feel her heart pounding from whatever had just happened. 1 second, they were being chased. The next, they had jumped That didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. She clutched the small silver device in her hand. It was smooth, cold, almost too light for its size. What do you mean, next time? She finally asked. The old man leaned back against the driver's seat, rubbing his face as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. They know you now. You saw them. That means they won't stop. Her stomach twisted. Who are they? He hesitated. They don't have a name. Not one humans would understand. But they've been here for a long time. Watching. Controlling. She swallowed hard. Controlling what? The old man's gaze darkened. Everything. The word sent a shiver down her spine. She tried to process what he was saying. Secret beings? Controlling the world? It sounded insane. But so did glowing orbs that could follow a moving car. She shook her head. This is crazy. I should be in my exam right now. My normal life. But instead, I'm here with some. She stopped, staring at him. What are you? His jaw tightened. I'm not from here. The words hit her like a punch. He said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. But the weight behind it, it was too much. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. No signal. Her brows furrowed. That wasn't a normal notification. It wasn't even from her carrier. It was just text. Plain. Unreadable. Then, without her touching it, her phone screen glitched. Static. Flickering symbols. And then. A voice. Soft. Mechanical. Whispering. Do not trust him. Her breath hitched. The screen flashed once more, then went completely dark. What the? She dropped the phone, her hands shaking. What was that? The old man didn't look surprised. They've already found you, he said grimly. It's starting. She grabbed the car door handle. No. No, this is insane. I'm leaving. The old man reached out and grabbed her wrist, gently, but firm. If you walk away now, they will find you alone. And I won't be there to stop them. She stared at him, her pulse pounding in her ears. Then she looked outside. The street was empty. Too empty. No cars. No movement. Just stillness. Like the world had paused. The old man exhaled. You feel it, don't you? She didn't want to admit it, but she did. The air felt too thick. The silence too heavy. Something was wrong. The old man let go of her wrist. I know you don't trust me. I don't blame you. But right now, you need to decide, do you want to go back to your life? Or do you want to survive? Her throat was dry. If she got out of this car, could she really just go back? Pretend this never happened? A chill crawled up her spine. No. Something told her, that wasn't an option anymore. She swallowed hard. What do I have to do? The old man's lips pressed into a thin line. First, you need to learn the truth. The car engine roared to life. And as they sped off into the night, she had a feeling. Her life would never be the same again. The car's engine roared as they sped down the empty road. Streetlights flickered past, casting long shadows. But something felt off. It was too quiet. She turned to the old man. Where are we going? He kept his eyes on the road. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer, she snapped. Her heart was still pounding from what had just happened. From the lights. From the voice in her phone. From the feeling that something was watching her. The old man exhaled. You need to understand, this isn't just about you anymore. The moment you helped me, you became a target. A chill ran down her spine. She gripped the small silver device he had given her earlier. What is this thing? He glanced at it. A key. To what? To staying alive. She gritted her teeth. Can you stop talking in riddles? Before he could answer, the dashboard glitched. The radio turned on by itself. Static. Then, a low, garbled whisper. She's with him. The screen flickered. Eliminate them both. Her stomach dropped. The old man slammed his foot on the gas. The car lurched forward just as the streetlights behind them exploded. Glass shattered. Sparks flew. The air crackled with an unnatural hum. She turned in her seat, and her blood ran cold. A black vehicle was speeding toward them. No headlights. No license plate. It was gaining on them. The old man cursed under his breath. They found us faster than I thought. Her breath hitched. Who? The ones I was trying to hide from. The black car got closer. It didn't drive like a normal vehicle. It glided. Like it wasn't touching the road at all. Her pulse hammered. What do we do? The old man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small metallic cube. He pressed something on its surface. And suddenly, the entire car shifted. The outside world blurred. Her stomach lurched as the car seemed to stretch, twist. And then, everything snapped back into place. The car was still moving, but the road was different. No streetlights. No buildings. Just darkness. She gasped. Where are we? The old man exhaled. Off the grid. She stared at him. What did you just do? I folded space, he said simply. Temporarily. She pressed a hand to her forehead. You're insane. Maybe, he admitted. But I just saved our lives. She turned back. The black car was gone. Her mind raced. This wasn't possible. None of this was possible. But it was happening. And now, she was in the middle of it. The old man slowed the car, pulling off the road and into a dense forest. He turned to her. We can't stay here long. But before we move again, you need to understand something. She swallowed hard. What? He locked eyes with her. This isn't just about me, he said. It's about you, too. Her breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? The old man sighed. You weren't supposed to help me. She frowned. I know. I was supposed to take my exam. No, he said. I mean, you weren't supposed to be able to see me at all. A chill crawled up her spine. What? The old man leaned forward. Normal people can't see me, he said. Not unless they're like you. Her head spun. Like me? What does that mean? The old man hesitated. Then he said something that made her stomach drop. You're not just human. The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. You're not just human. She stared at the old man, her breath caught in her throat. That's insane. The old man leaned back, his expression unreadable. Is it? Her mind raced. Everything that had happened, the glowing lights, the black car that glided, the way the world had tilted when they escaped, it was all impossible. And yet, here she was. She swallowed hard. What are you saying? He exhaled. I'm saying that you see things normal humans can't. That those lights weren't just lights. That those people, those things, in the car weren't just chasing me. They were chasing you too. Her skin prickled. Why? Because you're different. And they know it now. A cold dread settled in her stomach. No. No, that's not, I'm just a student. I was supposed to be taking my exam. I have a normal life. The old man shook his head. No, you had a normal life. The moment you stopped to help me, that life was over. She clenched her fists. You're lying. But deep inside, she wasn't sure anymore. The old man studied her. Have you ever noticed things before? Things that didn't make sense? She frowned. What do you mean? He tilted his head. Strange coincidences. Knowing things before they happen. Seeing things out of the corner of your eye that no one else reacts to. Her chest tightened. Flashes of memories came unbidden. The time she was walking home at night and felt something watching her, but when she turned, there was nothing there. The way she sometimes knew what someone was going to say before they said it. The way certain places made her feel wrong, like she was standing in a place she wasn't supposed to be. Her hands trembled. That's just intuition. Or luck. The old man's lips pressed into a thin line. No. It's not. She shook her head. Even if you're right, what does that have to do with them? Why would they care about me? He hesitated. Because they've been watching for people like you. And once they find one. He paused, his voice grim. They don't let them go. A shiver ran down her spine. She glanced down at the small silver device in her hand. This thing, you said it was a key. A key to what? He nodded. A key to keeping them out of your head. Her breath hitched. What? They don't just chase people like us, he said. They erase them. Her stomach twisted. They wipe memories. Make people forget they ever existed. And if that doesn't work? His voice darkened. They remove the problem permanently. She stared at him, horror creeping up her spine. You're saying they erase people? He nodded. And they're very, very good at it. Her hands tightened around the device. But if they could do that, why haven't they done it to me yet? The old man hesitated. Because of me. A lump formed in her throat. What do you mean? He sighed. I shouldn't have been here. I shouldn't have let you see me. But now that you have, you're under my protection. And as long as you're with me, they can't touch you. Her mind was spinning. This was too much. Too impossible. And yet, something inside her whispered that it was true. She exhaled shakily. So what now? Do I just go on the run forever? The old man shook his head. No. We find out why they're after you. And we end it. She swallowed. How? His expression hardened. By taking the fight to them. Her heart pounded. And as the car rumbled forward into the unknown, she realized. There was no turning back now. The car moved through the darkness, the road stretching endlessly ahead. The old man's words echoed in her mind. We take the fight to them. Her fingers tightened around the silver device in her palm. It was small, cold, and unervingly light. A key, he'd called it. A key to keeping them out of her head. She took a shaky breath. You make it sound like this is a war. The old man's jaw clenched. That's because it is. A chill ran down her spine. She glanced out the window. The night felt different now, like something was watching, even if she couldn't see it. She turned back to him. Who are they? He exhaled. A force that's been manipulating Earth for centuries. They don't conquer the way humans do. They don't send armies or drop bombs. They don't need to. Her hands curled into fists. Then what do? They control from the shadows, he said. They erase people like you. The ones who notice too much. The ones who don't fit the patterns. She shuddered. But why? What do they want? His grip on the will tightened. To keep humanity asleep. Her pulse quickened. Asleep? Blind. Controlled. Never asking the right questions. He looked at her. Do you know why you've always felt different? Why you see things others don't? She hesitated. Because she had. For years, she'd felt like something was off. Like the world didn't fit together the way it should. She saw patterns others didn't. She felt things others ignored. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't luck. It was real. The old man nodded at her silence. That's why they want you gone. Because if too many people like you wake up, their grip on this world weakens. A heavy weight settled in her chest. This wasn't just about her. It was about everyone. She swallowed. How do we stop them? The old man's expression hardened. We need to find their access point. The place where they operate from. The place where they erase people. Her stomach twisted. You know where it is? He hesitated. Then he pulled something from his coat, a small, black notebook. He tossed it into her lap. Open it. She flipped through the pages. They were filled with names, dates, locations. And then, her breath caught. Her own name was there. Dated before she even met him. Her hands shook. What is this? The list, he said grimly. Of people they've erased. Or were planning to. She felt sick. He pointed to a location written next to her name. That's where we go next. She stared at the page, her pulse racing. This wasn't just about learning the truth. It was about surviving it. She looked up at him. When do we leave? His lips pressed into a thin line. We already have. The road ahead stretched into the night, leading them straight into the heart of the unknown. And she had a feeling. The war was just beginning. The car sped down the empty highway, the old man's words still echoing in her head. We already have. She clutched the black notebook in her hands, her name staring back at her. They had marked her for erasure. But why? What made her so important? She turned to the old man. How long have you been keeping this list? His face was unreadable. Long enough to know that once someone's name is written down, they don't come back. A chill crawled up her spine. She swallowed. So what happens when we get to this place? The old man's hands tightened on the wheel. We destroy it. She blinked. Destroy it? You're talking about some kind of secret base, right? Government-level security? Weapons? He nodded. And worse. She exhaled sharply. And we're supposed to just walk in and take it down? He reached into his coat and pulled out another device, sleek, metallic, covered in strange symbols. Not exactly. Her eyes narrowed. What is that? A failsafe, he said. I've been waiting a long time to use it. Her stomach twisted. And it does, what? He glanced at her. It wipes them out. Every trace of them. She stared at him. If you had this, why didn't you use it before? He sighed. Because once I do, there's no turning back. They'll come at us with everything they have. She swallowed hard. So it's a suicide mission? A long silence. Then he said, only if we fail. The car rolled to a stop. She looked out the window, and her blood ran cold. They had arrived. The facility. It didn't look like a military base. There were no fences, no guards patrolling the perimeter. Just a gray, windowless building sitting in the middle of an empty field, humming softly like a machine that never turned off. Her skin prickled. The old man killed the engine. They don't need fences, he murmured. They don't expect anyone to get this far. She gritted her teeth. Then let's prove them wrong. They stepped out of the car. The air around them felt thick, charged with something unseen. The old man handed her the silver device. Keep this close. If something happens to me, run. Her pulse quickened. What do I do with it? He hesitated. Just press the button. You'll know when. She tightened her grip on it. Let's go. Inside the facility. The front door wasn't locked. No cameras. No alarms. Just silence. They stepped inside. The walls pulsed with a faint, eerie glow. The air was sterile, too clean, like a place that had never been touched by real life. She whispered, "Where is everyone?" The old man kept moving. They don't need guards. They have something worse. Her stomach clenched. Like what? He didn't answer. They moved deeper inside, past empty halls and strange, flickering screens. Then they reached a room filled with pods. Her breath caught. Inside each pod was a person. Suspended. Eyes closed. Her throat tightened. Are they dead? The old man's face was grim. No. Erased. She shivered. What do we do? He pulled out the second device. We wake them up. The attack begins. Before she could respond, a screech tore through the air. The lights flickered. A shadow moved at the far end of the hall. Her breath hitched. Something was coming. The old man cursed. They know we're here. A shape lunged from the darkness, tall, inhuman, moving too fast. She barely had time to react before it grabbed the old man, slamming him against the wall. She gasped. No. He struggled, but the thing, it wasn't human. Its face was smooth, featureless, like something unfinished. It turned its head toward her. A voice, distorted, mechanical, whispered in her mind. You should not be here. Her pulse thundered. The silver device in her hand vibrated. She didn't think. She pressed the button. A high-pitched pulse erupted from it. The creature screamed. The old man dropped to the floor as the thing convulsed, then shattered into dust. Silence. She was panting. The old man looked up at her, eyes wide. You activated it? She swallowed hard. I didn't know what else to do. He exhaled sharply. Then there's no turning back now. Alarms blared. The walls shifted, revealing more dark shapes. Dozens. Maybe more. She gritted her teeth. What now? The old man pulled the fail-safe device from his coat. Now? He pressed a button. The entire facility shook. Lights flashed red. The air hummed with a deep vibration. The pods cracked open. The people inside started to wake up. And as the facility began to collapse, she realized. They had just started a war. The facility shook violently. The walls cracked, sparks rained from the ceiling, and the ground beneath her feet trembled like an earthquake was ripping through the entire structure. She barely had time to react before the pods around her burst open. People collapsed to the floor, gasping, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. Some were young, old, men, women, all different, but all looked lost. The old man grabbed her arm. We need to move. Now. But before they could take a step, the dark figures emerged. They poured out of the walls, shifting shadows that weren't quite human, tall, faceless, gliding instead of walking. Their bodies morphed, twisted, adapting to their surroundings like living nightmares. Her pulse pounded. One of the figures stepped forward, its head tilting unnaturally. A deep, distorted voice echoed inside her mind, not spoken, but felt. "You should not have come here." Her head throbbed as the voice crawled through her skull like 1,000 whispers overlapping. She stumbled, clutching her temples. The old man pulled her up. "Don't listen. They're trying to break into your mind." She clenched her teeth and forced herself to focus. "Not today." The old man slammed the failsafe device onto the floor. It hummed with energy, sending out a wave of static that made the air crackle. The dark figures flinched, their smooth, featureless faces distorting. One of the freed captives, a young man, staggered forward. "Where am I?" "No time to explain," she said quickly. "We need to get out of here." The dark figures lunged. The old man grabbed her hand and ran. The escape. The halls of the facility were crumbling. The walls were peeling away, revealing the true structure beneath, not metal, but something organic. The whole place felt alive. She didn't have time to think about it. Behind them, the freed captives followed, some stumbling, others barely able to stand. The exit was ahead. But then, the air shifted. A figure appeared in front of them. Not one of the shadows. Something worse. A tall figure, wearing a black suit, stood in the doorway. Its face was almost human, but not quite. The features were too smooth, too symmetrical. The eyes were hollow, empty. The old man skidded to a stop. "No." The figure smiled. It wasn't a real smile. "Going somewhere?" it asked. Its voice was wrong, too perfect, too rehearsed, like it had practiced speaking, but never really understood how. Her heart pounded. The old man whispered, "That's not just one of them. That's a handler." She swallowed hard. "What's the difference?" He didn't take his eyes off the thing. "The others erase people. This one decides who gets erased." A chill crawled up her spine. The handler stepped forward, tilting its head. "You think you are special?" it said, almost amused. "You are not the first to fight back." It gestured to the people behind her. "You see them?" the handler said smoothly. "They tried, too. And yet," it smirked. "Here they are." Her stomach twisted. They had been erased, but somehow, they had survived in those pods. The old man stepped in front of her. "Get them out of here," he murmured. She froze. "What?" His grip tightened on the failsafe device. "I'll hold them off. You need to get these people to safety." Panic surged in her chest. "No. We do this together." But the old man just smiled. A sad, knowing smile. "I was never meant to make it out of this." Her throat tightened. "No. I won't leave you." The handler raised a hand. The air rippled. The freed captives cried out in pain, clutching their heads. The handler smiled again. "You will forget." The old man shouted. "Go." She clenched her jaw. Every instinct told her to fight. But she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She grabbed the arm of the closest captive and ran. The others followed. She didn't look back. The facility collapses. They burst through the exit just as the ground split open behind them. The entire building shook, sinking into itself. Lights flickered. A deafening roar echoed through the night. Then, an explosion. The shockwave threw her forward. She hit the ground hard, her vision blurring. Silence. When she forced herself to sit up, the facility was gone. A massive crater remained, smoke rising into the night. She turned back, searching for the old man. But he was gone. Her chest tightened. No. The freed captives stirred, groaning, confused. Some were crying, others were just staring in shock. She clenched her fists, blinking back tears. This wasn't over. The war wasn't won. But now, she had something she didn't have before. People. She looked at the device in her palm. The failsafe had been activated, but not fully used. She still had a weapon. And she wasn't alone anymore. She exhaled shakily and stood up. This was just the beginning. The smoke still rose from the crater where the facility had once stood. The night air was heavy, filled with the distant echoes of destruction. She stood at the edge, staring at the empty space, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The old man was gone. Her hands clenched at her sides. They had won. But it didn't feel like a victory. Behind her, the freed captives murmured, confused, weak, trying to make sense of what had happened. Some clung to each other, others stood frozen, their minds struggling to piece together lost time. She swallowed hard and turned to them. "We need to move," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "They're not gone. Not completely." A woman with hollow eyes looked up. "Who are you?" She hesitated. Who was she? A student who had missed an exam? A girl who had stumbled into something too big? Or was she something else now? She inhaled deeply. Someone who wasn't supposed to be here. But now, I am. The others exchanged glances. They had been erased, lost in time, trapped in a place that shouldn't have existed. And now, they were free, but freedom came with fear. "What happens now?" a young man asked, his voice barely a whisper. She looked at the silver device still clutched in her palm. The old man had given it to her, told her it was the key to staying alive. But she understood now, it wasn't just a weapon. It was a choice. She had a choice. They all did. She could walk away, disappear, try to reclaim the normal life she had lost. Or, she could fight. She turned to the group, her heart hammering. They want us to forget. They want us to disappear. To pretend none of this happened. She took a step forward. But we won't. The freed captives straightened. The fear in their eyes flickered, just for a moment, into determination. A man in his 40s nodded slowly. They took everything from us. They erased our lives. A young girl clenched her fists. Then let's take them back. Her chest tightened. The old man had fought alone for so long. But now, they had something stronger than any weapon. Each other. She exhaled, looking out into the distance. The world hadn't changed. But she had. She turned to the group. "Let's go. We have work to do." They began to walk away from the wreckage, toward a new future, toward something bigger. And as she took her first step, she knew one thing for sure. She had missed her exam. But she had found her purpose.